Okay, I did find some sandpaper. This is just 220 grit. It's not it's quite fine. You don't really see the grit in here. It's nice and soft. I just tear off a little piece of it. And again, starting at the center back, I kind of roll around. And I'm going to see whether you can see the difference. I'm not sure if you can tell the difference between those two edges. So it's cut over here, and over here it's been buffed and sanded a little bit. I'm not sure if it really shows up. I'll hold it in a couple of different ways. But I can certainly see it and feel it from here. This feels very rough, and this is just rounded. And that's the idea, is you want that edge to take the corners off of that. And again, it's a light touch. I'm not scrubbing it. I'm just going over. If you need to go over again, you'll go over again, but don't go to town in one place. If you've got a little area that's a little bigger, you can just kind of keep going at it and worry it just a little bit more to get that to be a little straighter. Like one little area. And go around in a little circle there, and then see if you can get that little, whatever little notch you think you have there. All right, so that's it. You're just a nice, gentle thing. I'm already halfway through my hat. You know, it's not that big of a deal. Okay, just a nice, soft little edge there. Now, if you're going to bind it, you don't have to do this, right? I mean, this is only if it's a raw edge. Okay, so if you're binding it, then the idea is, if you know, you can put a plastic wire in, or you can just bind in and of itself. The binding usually on a men's is very small. It's usually sewn like with a French binding kind of, and a number 3 ribbon. That's usually it. It goes right sides together here, it's stitched down in here, and it's rolled over, and there's just enough to make it. How they do that in a factory quickly, I don't know how they do it. I really don't. And then it's usually either stitched in the ditch or top stitched on. But it's really skinny. I mean, a number 3 ribbon, let me see, is this, right? So if I was binding this is the number 3. I don't have a pin here. And it would be about 1/8 of an inch of binding, and then it makes it like that, right? Teeny, teeny little binding. Tiny. The smaller it is, the harder it is to work. But that's usually what that is. All right, if it's bound, it's very small, unlike a lady's, which is usually wider. A men's binding is usually very circumspect. Okay, and most of the time not contrasting, occasionally slightly contrasting, a little tonal difference, but really high contrast was very 1930s zoot suit kind of like musical comedy kind of thing, but also 1930s kind of hipsters or hipsters, jazzy kind of guys, you know, sometimes had high contrast, wide brim hats with high contrast binding. What's his name? I can't remember his name. Not Cap Calloway, who I'm thinking of, but maybe Cap Calloway, but I'm thinking of somebody else off the top of my head, but had big zoot suit kind of hats. Okay, anyway, so I'm going to stop now. You want to go and clean that up like I showed you. You can kind of get at edges. Now, if you really screw up and you cut really badly, you'll just have to make the hat shorter, probably. I mean, binding it isn't going to solve that. Binding will just highlight an uneven edge. So it's really up to you. Now, if you want to practice, I would say I drew one line on there. But I had a lot of rounding. I could have drawn other lines just to practice following it. And that might be an excellent idea. Just to get a sense of the steadiness of how you have to cut to keep things nice and clean. Okay, so If you have extra rounding, do some extra lines, just follow them, and then go into your real one and cut on the real place. Okay, we'll do this again tomorrow. I'll send you a video on steaming the crown, and then also steaming this to hold it into its shape, because right now, you know, does that in a second. So I want that, I'll steam it so that it tends to stay put more. Okay, that's it.